Okay, whetstones, there's different types and you have to treat them differently. Sometimes you might have heard things called oil stones, which you normally use for sort of sharpening lawnmowers and things back in the day, and your granddad might have one in the shed and everything. We don't want an oil stone. We're after whetstones. These are the type we use, and you have to soak them in water before you use them. The lower the grit, so this is a 220, goes right up to 8,000, remember. The lower the grit, the longer you have to soak them for. This one's like a sieve. The water falls out, that's really easy. The reason you've got to soak them a long time when they're lower grit is the grit particles are bigger, therefore the gaps in between all those different particles is bigger, so it holds more air. So we're going to put them in there and you're going to wait a couple of minutes till all the bubbles come out of it. Once there's no more bubbles coming out, they're ready to start using. Only bring them out as you need them. Leave the rest in there still soaking, because the water will fall out of them as you go. Higher the grit, the less you have to worry about it. We top that up. Got a milk jug full of water here. I'll be pouring that on top of my stone as I'm working. The water is there as a lubricant, and that's what we need to use it for. Do not use these dry. You'll know when they're dry, it makes a horrible grating noise. We want nice and smooth. So I've got my whetstone, I've put it down on a tea towel. This is to stop it shifting around too much. I've got to fill my water on here, remember that's my lubrication. This is my knife. It's not too bad, so I'm only going to use a 2000 grit. But basically what I'm showing you here is exactly the same regardless of what grit size you're on. You just start at the lowest one that you think you need to and work your way up. So we're at 2000, this knife's not too bad, so I'm going to do a 2000. This is basically a maintenance sharpener as opposed to a hardcore sharpen. So I'm just going to use this one to get this sharp. I'm going to sharpen in a couple of different ways. There's a couple of different things we have to work on. I'm going to sharpen at an angle to the stone, and I want to get it at an angle. Now because this is a big knife, I'm going to sharpen it in maybe 2 or 3. I need to be able to fit each of that bit on the knife. I might be able to get away with 2 parts of the knife. We'll see how we go, I don't know. And I'm going to do with up and down motion. So I'm using this knife on an angle and I'm going up and down on this stone, and that's going to allow me to sharpen this. And I'm putting the pressure down on the backward stroke. I'm not putting the pressure on the upward stroke, but I don't lift the knife. If I lift the knife, I'm going to mess around with my angle. So I'm going to keep it rested on the stone and I'm going to use the depth pressure when I pull back, and I'm going to try and keep that angle. Be careful you don't bang your handle on here. Things can get out of the way a bit. If you twist a little bit, it's okay, no one's going to judge you about it. It's your kitchen, you can do what you like. Already you can see my stone's dried out. So I put a bit more water on there just to lubricate that up a little bit. And I'm going to keep having to pour it on this one until we move up to the higher grits. The action needed, it's an up and down motion. I'm going to put my fingers resting on the front of the blade there. And remember, I only apply pressure when I'm down. If we do 90 degrees here, so I've got, as if you can put a square up there, I've got a 90-degree angle. I can go half that to 45, I can half that again to 22.5, and if I go down a smidge more, I'm getting to about where I need to go. And if we look at where that gap is, it's about the height of 2 coins, and that's kind of where we need. So if you imagine 2 coins stacked there, I can actually rest there. What I have done before in the past when I'm teaching people how to do this, is we'll stack 2 coins down at the bottom edge here. They can rest the base of the knife there, and then they know roughly where they got. They've got a repeatable thing they can return to. What I like to do is I use my fingers against the side of the stone, I find out roughly where it is, and then I'll use that and the feel of where that is on my finger. I'll use that as my gauge of where to go. Just be careful you don't end up grinding your fingers as opposed to the knife. Sometimes it can hurt. Okay, a bit more water on here. And then we'll go for a cut. So I'm only going to sharpen this bit, and then I'll take it off and I'll sharpen this bit, and then eventually I'll do the edge. And to begin with, that's all I need to do. We're not at it for hours, we're not at it for ages. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get a little burr to appear on the edge of this knife. A very tiny little bit of metal. Not quite there yet, I'm going to have to drill a bit more. Okay, I've got a very gentle burr there now. And now I'm going to move over to the other end. And that is kind of what I'm going to do all the way. I'm going to use the amount I use for the first half to judge how I do the second half, and then finally the last half. Hopefully we can speed this up and you guys won't have to go to sleep. Ooh, gone dry. Okay, with that done, I've got a burr all the way across now. You can see how shiny this is now. So we've cut through that patina on the end there, patina, whichever way you want to pronounce it. And you can see where I've actually exposed some of that metal. I'm now going to do the same here. So I flip the knife over again. Okay, so now I've taken the burr off one side, flipped it over, or I put a burr on one side, flipped it over, taken that burr off the other side, and that will start to make the good burr come back the other way. So now I've got a general feel. I've cut an edge for it. I know roughly where I'm at now. I need to try and repeat that angle every time that I do this. And now I'm going to do a couple of different angles, and I'm going to just try and do normally like 4 swipes on one side, 4 on the other, then I'll do 3 swipes on one side, 3 on the other, then I'll do 2 and so on, till I get down to 1 and 1, and I'll do 1 swipe each way, and then I'll stop, and that's the time to move on to the next stone. So let's see what we can do. Still got water on there, so here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going quite fast because I do this a lot. Take your time, get that angle right. Okay, so there's no burr now, everything's good, that's starting to come sharp, I can feel that. Again, you test the sharpness just by moving your finger over the side, never down the blade, but side on you'll be able to feel just how sharp that's getting. A little bit more water. So now I've done 4, I'm going to go down to 3. Finally, 1. And this one's more of what we call a stropping action. So I'm only going away from the knife now. I never want to dig the knife into the stone. And the softer the stone, or the higher the grit, you'll find the higher grit stones are a little bit softer, the more likely you are to dig into that stone. So that's why one of the reasons we don't want to put pressure when we go with the blade. We always want to be doing it away from the blade. Okay, that's really dried up now, but that's okay, because we're kind of done with this stone now. So again, we'll just feel it, go side on, that's getting really sharp now. Just to finish this off, top tips I always do, just with the weight of the knife, I take it down the side of the stone, put no pressure on that at all, literally right on that edge. That does wonders to bring that up to where it needs to be. But we're not finished yet, there's one final thing we need to do before we move on to the next stone. Put that down and just drag the knife twice, just the weight of the knife, just drag it over the spoon handle. This still feels smooth to us, but in there we've basically ended up with saw edge right on the end there. We've been grinding away. And those saw edges, if we're not careful, they can bend over and end up going rounded, and that's where you're going to lose a lot of your sharpness. We just knocked them all off on there now. This is now ridiculously sharp. And that's only at 2000 grit. That'll cut paper perfectly clean just as it is.